Bottle, okay, Prabhu, that is plastic, you know. You want to put it there? Plastic.
Start. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya. Gopi Janaballabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivaradari Yasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Vishwabhad Paramahansa Bhavaraja Acharya, also associated with AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go Premanandi. All glories to the devotees. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Pastacha Desha Tadane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. We have various Vaishnava sampradayas. Can you just go on speaking? Simultaneous. Okay. Of course, there are other sampradayas that are not Vaishnava sampradayas, but among Vaishnava sampradayas, we have 4 main sampradayas, and one of those is called the Brahma Sampradaya. Mainly it's dominated by Madhvacharya and his teachings of Dvaita philosophy. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu traces his lineage back to that Brahma Sampradaya. So therefore the head of our Sampradaya, of Lord Chaitanya's Sampradaya, is also Brahma, like the Madhvas. However, our theology, our worship, our methods of sadhana are quite different from Madhva Sampradaya. Of course, different from all the other ones, but also different from Madhva Sampradaya, based on the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, in these different Sampradayas, of course, everybody accepts the Vedas as a common authority, Vedas. But they also accept certain scriptures, and they quote those scriptures often to support their main ideas. For instance, in Madhvacharya's Sampradaya, they often quote Mahabharata. And in the Sri Sampradaya, Ramanujacharya, they often quote Vishnu Purana. The other 2 Sampradayas, Nimbarka and Vallabha, they take Bhagavatam, and Lord Chaitanya also takes Bhagavatam as main authority. Of course, this doesn't mean they reject the Vedas, but they use the Bhagavatam as for a lot of their preaching work and discussion. So Lord Chaitanya also has chosen Bhagavatam, so it's not unique, because we see Vallabha Sampradaya and Nimbarka also rely heavily on Bhagavatam. So it's not unusual to have Bhagavatam as the main source. Sometimes we may wonder why we have Bhagavatam class every morning. Why Bhagavatam? Why not Upanishads? Why not Chaitanya Charitamrita? Why not, we read so many different books? But Bhagavatam, because it's the main scripture for our Sampradaya. Of course, we can also ask, why do we have to have scripture anyway? Well, just chant Hare Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what does he say? Chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name. Nam Sankirtan is the Yuga Dharma, rely on that. So why do we have to study scripture? And there are groups, particularly in Bengal, that may criticize us. Why you study scripture so much? You know, this is all intellectual stuff. We have to develop bhakti and prema. So let us just chant Hare Krishna. However, if we look at the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he also emphasized scripture like other sampradayas. So not only Vaishnava sampradayas, all groups in India, even Shankaracharya, will base their philosophy on scripture, on Vedas. And if we go to other religions, Jains, Sikhs, Buddhists, Christians, Jews, people following Islam, they also rely on scripture. Of course, they have different scriptures. But all the major religious groups have a reliance on a scripture. They have a scriptural basis. So we can always ask, what scripture should I read? And the answer is, you're free. No one is forcing you to accept one scripture or the other. Well, everybody has a choice. And we never force anybody that you have to accept this work, otherwise we're going to chop your head off or whatever like that. We don't say that. So you're free to choose as a human being which scripture you follow based on faith. We have a conviction that this is our authority. So based on that faith, then you study a particular scripture. Of course, if we have that faith, it should have some reason. If it doesn't have a reason at all, then it's called blind faith. Why do we accept one particular scripture? I like the color of the cover. I like the pictures in it. My parents followed the same work, whatever. These are not really good answers for faith. Yeah? If we're to have real faith, then we have to read the scripture, get knowledge of the scripture, see which ideas are presented, which stories are presented, and see if we can agree with those conclusions. So based on that, we develop our faith. So if we really have real faith, we have to know the work quite well. And then we can say, oh, I have faith in this particular scripture. And you are free to choose whatever like that. The people of India, long ago, they developed or they manifested different types of scriptures. And these scriptures are considered to be authoritative for that group of people. Which scriptures are they? So in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it says we have 4 Vedas, Itihasas like Mahabharata and Ramayana, Puranas, of which we have 18 major Puranas, 18 minor Puranas, Upanishads, which are actually said to be 108, which are actually part of the Vedas, verses and sutras and other commentaries as well, which follow after those other teachings mentioned previously. So this is what we consider Vedic scriptures. When we talk about Vedic scriptures, this is what it means. And other people in India may claim, well, we've got this new Purana that somebody wrote 20 years ago. This is also scripture. It's called a Purana. No, we don't accept that. It's not one of the 18 Puranas. Or, I've got a new Veda. I wrote a new Veda. No, we don't accept it. They have 4 Vedas. So we have these traditional works which have been accepted by all people in the past in India. We call this the Vedic literature. Of course, we have what is called Saddarshanas, or 6 major philosophical groups who claim that they are following the Vedas. So we have the logicians and the Karma Mimamsakas and the Vaisheshika philosophers, yoga philosophy, and then we have Vedanta. And we're part of the Vedanta group. They all claim to follow the scripture, Vedic scripture. So we say they are Astika. They follow the Vedas. Unfortunately, they all have different ideas, different conclusions. So how can one authoritative scripture have different conclusions? Which means that these different groups have taken the one group of scriptures, and given different conclusions. It means they've misinterpreted those scriptures. So simply by saying we follow the Vedas does not mean we have the proper conclusion. We have a completely opposite conclusion. So that's why, even if we're Vedantists, Shankaracharya is also a Vedantist, but he has opposite conclusion. Nothing exists except Brahman. We say, world is real, Jiva is real, Brahman has a form, Bhagavan. Quite different conclusion from Shankaracharya, but all following the Vedas. So we have to be careful when we say we're following the Vedas. We should also see what is the conclusion. We have to have a proper conclusion. Anyway, the Vedas are, we can say, are given a special place. They are considered to be eternal, whereas the other works are written at a certain time. Mahabharata was written by Vedavyas. Valmiki wrote Ramayana. So they have a beginning, and therefore the Vedas, on the other hand, are said to have no author. They are eternal. And at the beginning of the universe, of course, Brahma produces the Vedas from his mouths, but it's exactly the same Veda which was in a previous universe, and a previous universe, and a previous universe. So he didn't really create it. He simply transmits it, that's all. In other words, the Vedic words are unchangeable and they continue throughout the universe and the next universe and the next universe. In that sense, they're eternal. And they are given a certain reverence because of that, unchanging. Of course, Bhagavatam tells us that Veda Vyas, just before the beginning of Kali, divided the Vedas into one Veda, into 4 parts. That's the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samveda, and Atharva Veda. And that's the Veda that we have now. But those syllables, words, sentences, chapters are all eternal. Problem with the Vedas, of course, is they're huge. And the language is difficult to understand. It's Sanskrit kind of, but it's also a little bit different. And some of the meaning is ambiguous, and even great scholars don't know the meaning of some things. And they have arguments over what the meaning is. And huge, and you require qualification. You have to be Dvija, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana, to study the Vedas. So we have the 4 Vedas. Each Veda has 4 parts to it. Something called the Brahmanas and Aranyakas, which deal with mantras for sacrifices. So basically karma kanda, sacrifices to go to Svargaloka, etc. It's called the Purva Mimamsa, or karma kanda. A 3rd section is called Upanishads. So each Veda will have Upanishads attached to it. These are considered to be Gyan Kanda, or Uttara Mimamsa. And they deal not with staying in the material world, but getting out of the material world. So this includes liberation and bhakti and prema. 4th section deals with, it's just a collection of verses praising devatas, Vishnu, Shiva, etc. This is called the Samhita portion, or Upasana Kanda. So each of these Vedas will have these 4 parts. For instance, each will have a group of Upanishads. The Rig Veda will have Kaushitaka and Aitreya Upanishad. Yajur Veda will have Taittiriya Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka, Aranyaka Upanishad, Kata Upanishad, Svetasvara Upanishad. Samveda has Chandogya Upanishad. Atharva Veda has Mandukya, Mundaka, Prashna Upanishad, Gopaltapani Upanishad. So what is the use of all this? Because the Vedas are so vast, a learned Brahmana should learn at least 1 Veda with its 4 parts. So we should learn the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Samhita, and Upanishads for 1 Veda, like Atharva Veda or Rig Veda, etc. If you're very intelligent, you could learn 2 Vedas, or 3 Vedas, or 4 Vedas. But at least 1 Veda with all these 4 parts to it. So besides the Vedas, we have other works. As I said, the Vedas are huge, difficult to understand, require qualification of being a Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya. Other works were written by great sages for common people. So we have Ramayana of Valmiki and Mahabharata of Vedavyas. These do not require any qualification, so Sudras, Mlecchas, anybody can study or read or listen to these works. And easier to understand grammatically, more stories, meaning ultimately will be the same as the Vedas, but presented in an easier way. Of course, in Mahabharata, we also have Bhagavad Gita. So these are also authoritative, like Vedas. Same message, but different presentation. Easier. However, we do know that Mahabharata is also a very long work. Ramayana, also a very long work. So again, it's a little bit difficult for everybody to know even one of these works. Vedavyas is prolific, so he also decided to write Puranas, so he wrote 18 Puranas. And his idea was to give the Vedic philosophy to different types of people. Because obviously in this world we have people in Tamagun, Rajagun, and Sattvagun. So each of these people require different preaching. Just as if you're preaching to different people, you have to recognize their level. Some people you can preach philosophy, some people you cannot preach philosophy. Some people you can just give prasadam, some people you can give them kirtan, some people you can say a little bit of philosophy, not too much, like that. So according to the person, you can give different things. So Vedavyasa says, okay, people are in Tamagun, let them worship Shiva, because Shiva's in charge of Tamagun. So in the Tamasic Puranas, she encourages people to worship Shiva. Other people are in Rajagun. Who's in charge of Rajagun? Brahma. So in the Rajagun Puranas, people are encouraged to worship Brahma. Less people are in Sattvagun, but they worship Vishnu. So in different types of Puranas, Vedavyasa advised the people to worship different deities according to the guna. Now, this of course is explained in different things like Matsya Purana, etc. Besides this, the sages got a little bit prolific and enthusiastic, so they wrote more scriptures. So they wrote what are called the Smritis, to codify the rules of Varnashram for the common people. So we have Manu Smriti, for instance, Yagyavalkya Smriti, Atri Smriti, Vishnu Smriti. Many of these works, approximately 18 or 20 works like this. Also considered authoritative. And sometimes our acharyas will quote these Smritis. Another category is called Pancharatra. These are all Vaishnava works. We call it Vaishnava Tantra also. There's said to be 108 Vaishnava Pancharatra texts. They largely deal with the philosophy of Vishnu, four expansions, Chaturvyuha, etc. Deal with deity worship, rules for festivals, rules for constructing temples, rules for making deities, etc. So largely about archana. So all of these are different types of scripture. And it's too much scripture. To make things simpler, they start writing things, but we got too much of this, and how can anybody learn the four Vedas and the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and all of the Puranas and the Pancharatra and the Smritis? It's probably nobody, even the great scholars in India, nobody knows everything. It's difficult. Vedavyasa also was troubled because he was very prolific in writing 18 Puranas, dividing the Vedas up, writing Brahma Sutras, etc. And then, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, Narada Muni came and said, yes, you tried to benefit the people, but you're not successful. Why? Because you've confused everybody. Worship Vishnu, worship Shiva, worship Brahma. It looks like you're saying anybody can worship anything. So this of course, it's a practical way. Preach to persons according to their qualification. That's good. But unfortunately, the people of Kali Yuga are not very intelligent, and they'll simply get confused by all of this. Vedavyasa's strategy was, let them start at the bottom if they're in Tamagu and worship Shiva, but by doing that, following scripture, they become purified. When they get purified, they graduate to Rajagun. Then they can worship Brahma. By worshiping Brahma, they become purified. They can graduate to Sattvagun. Then they worship Vishnu. So this was his strategy. Through worshiping different devatas, finally we come to worship Vishnu and become a Vaishnava. Very good. But Narada Muni said, not going to work in Kali Yuga. People are not very intelligent. They'll get stuck at the bottom and remain at the bottom and think, I'm worshiping because scripture says, Vedavyasa says, worship Shiva, it's ultimate, therefore I'll just do this. Secondly, everybody is attached to material things. And because they get nice material results from worshiping Shiva, they won't want to do anything else. They won't purify themselves and get up to sattva gun. So, he said, it's too confusing for the people. Better for everyone, you simply advise them to worship one deity, Krishna. Yeah, so that should be the advice for everybody. Then they can ignore all the other scriptures. And therefore, Vedavyas wrote Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the conclusion of all the scriptures. The Vedas were there, and in the Vedas, of course, the Gyan part, the superior part over Karmakanda is Upanishads. Upanishads were summarized in Brahma Sutras by Vedavyas. He gave the conclusion of the Upanishads there. But Brahma Sutra is also difficult to understand. He wrote the Puranas, but too many Puranas, too many conclusions. He wrote the Mahabharata, again, so many different ideas are there. So, all of this is condensed with a final conclusion in Srimad Bhagavatam. Final deity to worship, final process, Bhakti Yoga. So this is the conclusion of all the scriptures written by Vedavyas himself, who compiled the Vedas, wrote the Brahma Sutras, wrote the Puranas, wrote the Mahabharata. Conclusion, final scripture is Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's why we study Srimad Bhagavatam. So this, of course, is mentioned in the different scriptures like Mahabharata and Garuda Purana. This composition is exceedingly perfect. It contains the meaning of Brahma Sutras and determines the meaning of the Mahabharata. It functions as a commentary on the Gayatri, which is the essence of the Vedas, and fortifies the meaning of the Vedas. This is from Garuda Purana. So this is a glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam as the conclusion of all scriptures. So Bhagavatam, therefore, is very, very is revered by many great acharyas, and thus we have so many different commentaries by different authors, including a commentary from Madhva Sampradaya, from Shri Sampradaya, from Vallabha Sampradaya, and others as well, and of course in Gaudiya Sampradaya. So many commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam, not on any other Purana like this. They haven't commented on Padma Purana at all. Sridhar Swami has written a little bit of a commentary on Vishnu Purana, but mainly all the acharyas concentrate on Srimad Bhagavatam. So very, very special Purana. So we know that the Lord appears as different avatars. He's very magnanimous, so he likes to appear in different forms. So some people like fish. So the Lord appears as Matsya Avatar. Some people like animals, so the Lord appears as Varaha. Some people like birds, so the Lord appears as Hamsa Avatar. Yeah, some people like human beings, so he appears as Krishna, who's very human-like. He appears among the Devatas as Upendra or Vamana. And among scriptures, he appears as Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the crown jewel of all the different scriptures. So, no controversy if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has chosen Bhagavatam as the main scripture. Of course, it's also because Bhagavatam supports all of the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, Bhagavatam is the crown jewel of all scriptures. But, and so, okay, worship Krishna. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. And many people will attack us and say, oh, why Krishna? Why you're saying only Krishna? That's very fanatical. Actually, Bhagavatam is very liberal. It says that the Lord actually appears differently in radically different forms. So he is the impersonal Brahman, which is worshipped by the Gyanis and Yogis and Shankaracharya. It's acceptable. It's an aspect of Supreme Lord, non-different from Bhagavan. We have the Paramatma feature, worshipped by the Yogis. It's also accepted as a form of the Lord. In fact, it's non-different from Bhagavan in form. with Shankha, Chakra, Padma, etc. Forearm Vishnu form. It's Paramatma form. We accept that. And then finally we have Bhagavan, who is Krishna, but also Vishnu in all the different avatar forms. So all these are accepted as one supreme entity. So in this way, we cannot actually attack Brahman, because Brahman is part of Krishna. This is one aspect of Krishna himself. We cannot attack Vishnu because he is Bhagavan. We cannot attack Paramatma. He's also the same as Vishnu. So we accept all of these forms of the Lord, even though they're radically different, from completely impersonal, slightly personal, to very personal. And we say it's all one entity, all part of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the devotee following the Bhagavatam can tolerate all the religions, because all the religions go from the most impersonal all the way to the semi-personal. So of course we have Shankaracharya's philosophy of impersonal Brahman. Okay, it's an aspect of the Supreme Lord. Same in yoga philosophy. Okay, impersonal and Paramatma. Okay, it is part of the Supreme Lord also. We take Christianity. Lord has no form, no activities, a little bit of qualities. He creates the material world, etc. So, okay, a mixture of Brahman, Paramatma. Islam, again, no form qualities, but creator of the world, mixture of Paramatma and impersonal Brahman. All aspects of the Lord. So in that sense, bona fide. At the same time, they're all aspects of the Lord, they're not complete. So a complete aspect of the Lord is Bhagavan. So it's preferable to worship the complete rather than the partial forms. That's all. But we accept them all. Why the complete form is better? Greater satisfaction, greater bliss. So, in the Bhagavatam itself, there are different comparisons given, analogies, metaphors. So, one of them is that the Bhagavatam is like a lamp, a deepa. Why? Because a deepa gives off light. What does light do? Gives us knowledge. So Bhagavatam gives knowledge. Knowledge of what? The supreme entity, which we can call Brahman, not just the impersonal, but even the personal aspect of the Lord, the supreme entity. So general knowledge of supreme entity, supreme Lord, Ishvara, as opposed to jivas who have very little power, very little knowledge. So Bhagavatam gives us knowledge, so it is like a deepa. So, by doing this, of course, we understand we're not the body, we are the soul, and then there is a supreme soul. And from this, we can get delivered from our misery. Example of this is the Adhyatma Deepam mentioned in the second chapter of the first canto of Bhagavatam. There it says, Adhyatma Deepam. It's a revealer of Atma for those desiring to cross over dense ignorance with ease. So another comparison of the Bhagavatam is like the sun. Krishna is like the sun. And what does the sun do? It also gives light, gives knowledge. It gives more light than a lamp. More is revealed. So therefore, Bhagavatam reveals more than just, okay, we have a supreme entity. It starts describing the different qualities of the Lord, different pastimes of the Lord, different forms of the Lord. So this again is presented in chapter 3 of the first canto. Bhagavatam has risen like the sun to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga, and therefore gives us a lot of details about Bhagavan. So, by getting this greater knowledge, we can also negate or defeat all of the different misconceptions about the Supreme Lord. The third analogy given is that Bhagavatam is the highest fruit on the desire tree of the Vedas. Or the Vedic literature gives different results or fruits. One fruit, of course, is karma kanda. Result is svargaloka, and material enjoyment. Follow the Vedas, you can get material enjoyment. Another fruit is liberation. Follow the jnana kanda and jnana yoga, you can get liberation. And then you follow the bhakti scriptures, you can get prema. But if you follow Bhagavatam, you get special prema. What is a special prema? Krishna prema. Not just Krishna prema, Radha Krishna prema. So that's the highest fruit that the Bhagavatam presents, which is not presented in the other Puranas, the Vedas, etc. So the highest fruit on the tree, which is mentioned actually in the very beginning of the Bhagavatam. Nigamakalpa is the desire tree. And we have the Galitam phalam, the ripe fruit which falls off the tree of the Vedas. This is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So what makes it so sweet, this fruit at the top? One, it presents Madhurya Rasa as the highest, sweetest experience. It reveals Radha and Krishna, who experience Madhurya Rasa, and it gives us the method to attain Radha and Krishna and Madhurya Prema. This makes it the sweetest of all. Okay. Fourth comparison given is that Bhagavatam is like Mohini avatar. So, Mohini avatar is a form of the Lord who was very bewildering. Mohini means one who bewilders, fools, cheats. So, in the form of Mohini, Supreme Lord cheated the demons. The demons grabbed the nectar from churning the milk ocean, and the Devatas were very upset. Now that they have the nectar, they will drink it, and every time we attack them, even if we wound them, they'll drink the nectar, they'll recover, so we'll be defeated. So they went to Vishnu, and Vishnu says, I will handle the situation. He became Mohini avatar. So Mohini avatar went to the demons. When the demons saw Mohini, what happened? They were bewildered, and they fell in love with Mohini, who was Vishnu. They were quarreling over who would hold the nectar and drink the nectar. And when they saw Mohini, they forgot about that. And they began to praise Mohini. And so Mohini spoke to them, and they were very flattered. And then Mohini said, give me the nectar. And the demons, because they were bewildered, they gave her the nectar. She took the nectar and gave it to the Devatas. In this way, she cheated the demons. So, Bhagavatam is like the nectar pot, or like Mohini, and it cheats the demons of the nectar and gives it to the devotees. So devotees can understand Bhagavatam, impersonalists and others, materialists cannot. Same Bhagavatam, but they cannot understand it. The devotees read Bhagavatam, they can get the nectar. So Bhagavatam will disqualify some people. So that's the nature of Bhagavatam. So these are the four aspects of Bhagavatam. An example of cheating is that Bhagavatam itself gives verses which you could interpret in one way or the other. So the impersonalists will treat the verses in one way, devotees will treat it another way. Example is in the 12th canto, near the very end of the Bhagavatam. Sukadeva Goswami tells Parikshit, this Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy because the subject matter is one Brahman, a substance of no duality. Main goal of the work is merging in Brahman. So Sukadeva Goswami tells Parikshit this. And when the impersonalists and Mayavadis and others read this, they will say, very good. So Bhagavatam agrees with Upanishads and Jnana Yoga, merging in impersonal Brahman. So we accept Bhagavatam because this is the conclusion. Parikshit heard this and he was shocked. We know that the conclusion of Bhagavatam is Krishna. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. That's the whole essence of Bhagavatam. How can it be impersonal Brahman? Throughout the whole Bhagavatam, there are plenty of verses which will criticize impersonal Brahman and Jnana Yoga and liberation and praise Prema, Bhakti, Vaikuntha, Goloka. So how can the main goal of the work be emerging? So the devotees, when they read this verse, they may be puzzled, but say, this is not the conclusion. And this is exactly what Parikshit said. And Parikshit, when he replied to Sukadeva Goswami, no, this is not right. And the whole purpose of Sukadeva saying this was to test Parikshit. That's all. And Parikshit passed the test, and he understood this is just nonsense. And he rejected that conclusion. So we have to understand Bhagavatam properly and take all the statements in proper context. This is, of course, for devotees, we have to take this into consideration. Sometimes statements in the Bhagavatam and other scriptures may look a little strange, may look a little contradictory. We have to get the deeper meaning out of this sometimes because the Lord does not always reveal the meaning directly. This is what we call Parokshavada, mentioned by Krishna himself in the 11th canto to Uddhava. The Vedic seers and mantras say this indirectly. They will, okay, you should worship the Supreme Lord, but they don't say it directly, they'll say it indirectly. They do Parokshavada. Why? Because Krishna says, I like this indirect method. I do not speak directly. So the sages also speak indirectly, and they don't reveal the meaning directly. So we have to understand that. So there are many meanings to Bhagavatam. Superficial meaning, which may be for impersonalists or materialists or whatever. Deeper meaning for devotees. So we should try to get that deeper meaning. For instance, in the first verse of Bhagavatam, our acharyas, we can take the general meaning of Supreme Lord, etc. But then we have another meaning all about Krishna and his pastimes. Another meaning about Madhurya Rasa. Another meaning about Radha and Krishna. Another meaning about Bhakti. All these meanings are there in the first verse. Completely different meanings. So, the Bhagavatam also is the final scripture. Sometimes it may give Parokshavada, indirect meaning, so we have to study a little bit. The other, of course, is that Bhagavatam is not a small book, it's also a big book in 12 cantos, which may also be a little bit frightening for us because it looks too big. And it has different topics again. So we have Sarga, Visarga, Sthana, Poshna, Uti, Manvantara, Ishu, Anukata, Nirodha, Mukti, Asraya. 10 topics. This is common to other Puranas as well. They deal with these 10 topics. So we have the topic of creation or Sarga, secondary creation, Visarga, geography of the universe, planetary systems, Bhumandala called Sthana. Poshna means protection. Uti means tendencies of the living entities, demons and devotees, etc. Manvatara means the different 14 periods throughout the day of Brahma. Ishanakata means stories about the Lord. Nirodha means destruction. Mukti means liberation. Asra means the final shelter, the final cause of everything. So these are the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's why we don't have a little book, we have a big book, because that explains all these topics. So, third canto gives us Sarga, Mahavishnu glancing and manifesting all the material elements that form into universes. We have Visarga in the fourth canto. Brahma starts creating planetary systems, living entities, etc. Fifth canto talks about the structure of the universe with Bhumandala, Mount Meru in the middle, Dvipas around, higher planetary systems to Brahmaloka, lower planetary systems down to Patala, etc. This is the place where the living entities whom Brahma creates, the bodies, with the bodies, are placed in different parts of the universe. Canto 6 deals with Poshana, protection. How does the Lord protect the devotees within the universe? One way is through Nama. So there's a discussion of holy name. Ajamil chanted Nama Narayana is protected from Yamadutas. Of course, there are many other stories in other different cantos about the Lord's protection as well. This is one of the stories. So, Poshana, how the Lord protects the devotee. Uti means, let's say, devas and demons are different broad categories of classification of entities in the universe. We have demons and devotees. So, 7th canto has a story of Prahlad, great devotee, and Hiranyakasipu, great demon, and the conflict that arises because of that. Of course, there are many other stories like that throughout the Bhagavatam. 8th canto tells us about the different Manus and their reigns. 9th canto talks about Ishvana Katha. Of course, there's stories throughout the Bhagavatam. Particularly 9th canto, we have the story of Ramchandra. 11th canto deals with liberation. It deals with many other topics, but one of the topics for 3 or 4 chapters in Krishna's discussion with Uddhava is liberation or mukti. 12th canto deals partly with destruction, 4 types of destruction in the universe. 10th canto deals with supreme cause of everything, supreme shelter, Bhagavan Krishna. So in this way we have 10 different topics presented, of which the most important topic is presented in 10th canto. So these can, of course, be classified according to these different analogies. The lamp, giving general knowledge, sarga and visarga, creation, destruction. The sun, giving more knowledge, all the other cantos giving different avatar forms, planetary systems, etc. Final fruit is, in 10th canto, the asraya. So in this way, the Bhagavatam gives a lot of information about different things. Ultimately, everything is related to the asraya Krishna. So if we talk about and read about creation, sarga and visarga, etc., we should relate it to Krishna. Though these different explanations are given in relation to Vishnu, Mahavishnu, Garbhadaksha Vishnu, ultimately, they are expansions from Krishna. So they are reflections of the greatness of Krishna and the intelligence of Krishna. So we can study all these different things and somehow relate it back to Krishna. So, as I said, Bhagavatam is very big. So we got too many topics, 10 topics at least, and subtopics out of that. Why did we just say Krishna's to Bhagavad Swayam and read 10th canto and reject everything else? That would be a simple solution, make it much simpler. Of course, even that we'll say it's too big because there's 90 chapters in the 10th canto. That's too big also. Why don't we just take the first half of it, Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan? Or if we take less than that, we'll just take the 5 chapters of the Rasa Leela and just study that, make it very small. But Vedavyasa has given us the whole Bhagavatam, so we're obligated to study the whole thing. So why too many topics? Why miss all these different things there? So one answer is that Bhagavatam is like Krishna. And different people approach Krishna and appreciate him in different ways. People can also go to Bhagavatam and appreciate it in different ways and get different valuable things out of it. That's the nature of Bhagavan himself. We have people with material desires that approach Krishna, people who want liberation approach Krishna, people who want prema approach Krishna. All sorts of varieties of people approach Krishna. There's a famous verse in the 10th canto when Krishna comes into the arena of Kamsa, and 12 different types of people see Krishna differently. He's one Krishna, they all see him differently. So the wrestlers saw Krishna as a lightning bolt. The men of Mathura saw him as the best of males. The women saw him as Cupid. They fell in love with him. That's Madhurya Rasa. The cowherd boys joked with him. That's Sakya Rasa and Hasya Rasa. impious rulers took him as a chastiser, very angry. That's Rodra. His parents saw him as a child, Vatsalya rasa and Karuna rasa. Kamsa saw him as death. He was afraid. It's called Bhayanak rasa. The unintelligent took him as a material body. That's called Vibhatsa rasa. The yogis saw him as the absolute truth, Shanta rasa. And the Vrishnis saw him as their worshipable deity, Dasya rasa. So these are the 12 rasas, 12 different relationships, 12 different ways you can appreciate Supreme Lord. So, in one Krishna, everybody saw him in a different way. The rest of us saw him very, very strong and hard. The people of Mathura, men saw him as an astonishing figure. The women saw him as Cupid, Madhurya Rasa. Cowherd boys saw him as a friend and joked with him. The impious rulers, friends of Kamsa, saw him as a chastiser, very angry, Rodra Rasa. His parents saw him as a small child, Vatsalya Rasa. Kamsa saw him as death. The unintelligent saw him as a disgusting material body, Vibhatsa Rasa. Yogis saw him with Shanta Rasa, and the Vrishnis saw him in Dasya Rasa. So in this way, the Lord various. So Bhagavatam also. People will take it, they'll see it differently. Some people will appreciate and study all about Varnashram in there and say Varnashram is the final conclusion. Others people will take Jnana as the final conclusion. Others will take Yoga. There's so many chapters about Yoga there. And others will take Bhakti. And Krishna is the final conclusion. So it's available for everybody in different things. So all these topics are there for different people. But the devotees should understand and get the final essence of everything. It's also bewildering for people, but we take all these topics and somehow relate them, whether it's Karma Yoga and Varnashram or Jnana or Ashtanga Yoga. We also relate it somehow to Bhakti as the secondary means. So, now at the same time, for the demons, they take all these different topics in a different way. So devotees should study Bhagavatam, understand the final conclusion, also take all these secondary topics, and understand them in their relationship with the final conclusion. Then we have Bhagavatam as it is. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Can we have a round of Hari Bol for His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj for an amazing Bhagavatam class. Hari Bol! So dear devotees, very important announcement. So I hope are we having the simultaneous Chinese translation for the announcements? Online, okay, thank you. So Shantirba Mataji, okay, Tamil inga vandu announce பண்ணுவாங்க. So first and foremost, Hare Krishna and welcome to Hare Krishna National Convention 2024. So we would like to welcome the devotees who have just
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. எல்லாரும் பிரேக்ஃபாஸ்ட் சாப்பிட்டீங்களா? ஹரே கிருஷ்ணா. ஓகே, தயவுசெய்து எல்லோரும் கொஞ்சம் முன்னாடி வந்துடுங்க. ஓகே, மாதாஜிலாம் உட்காந்துருக்காங்களா? அந்த மாதிரி பிரபுஸ், தோஸ் ஹூ கேனாட் சிட் டவுன், கீழே தரையில் உட்காராதவங்க, உட்கார முடியாதவங்க சேர் எடுத்துக்கிட்டு முன்னுக்கு வந்துடுங்க. சரிங்களா? சேர் எடுத்து முன்னுக்கு வந்துடுங்க. ஓகே, 9:45 நம்ம கிளாஸ் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாம். ஓகே, அதுக்கு முன்னாடி யாரெல்லாம் வாசல்லையே செருப்பு விட்டுட்டு வந்தவங்க தயவு செய்து செருப்பை அந்த ரூமில் உங்களோட ஸ்லிப்பர்ஸ், செண்டல், உங்களோட செருப்பு ஏதாவது இருந்தாலும் அந்த ரூமில் தனியாக அதுக்குன்னு ஒரு ரூம் ஒதுக்கியிருக்காங்க, அந்த ரூமுக்கு கொண்டு போய் வச்சுருங்க உள்ளார. சரிங்களா? ஹரே கிருஷ்ணா.